All right, good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning, another edition of your Do Hard Things weekly wake up. How you doing, Tom?
Doing amazing.
Awesome.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning. Before we get into this week's topic, which is leaders are readers, and talking about some of the most impactful books, just real quick, this episode is brought to you by DoHardThingsNation.com, the apparel side. If you want awesome shirts, if you want to wear some Do Hard Things, you will show the world that you do hard things and remind yourself that you're a badass. Go over there and grab yourself some high quality gear. We got a bunch of new designs over there, and we're dropping new designs each week. And check out our event on September 10th, the first Do Hard Things Nation event, 5K 911, 9.11 mile run or ruck options. And if you're not, this is going to be up at Cooper's Landing, Missouri. But if you're not in this area, like you, Tom, you can do it virtually. So sign up there. And so today we're going to talk about leaders are readers. And I'll say that most of my life, Tom, I was not one to be much of a reader. I didn't like books. I didn't like reading. What about you?
I hated reading. You're forced to read in school, and it was nothing fun, right? Catcher in the Rye.
I think that was the thing for me. Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of books that we were forced to read that I absolutely did not resonate with, like Huckleberry Finn, all these classics. I just didn't like them. So reading was like a chore. It was like something that was an obligation. It was mandatory, and it wasn't fun. And,
right, and then what happens is you go to
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that what happens is you learn not to pick up books anymore. The percentage of people that don't pick up books after high school or college is astounding. I can look the stats up real quick, but it is quite profound. But I will say that when I started reading again, when I was at my lowest point in my life, and I knew that something needed to change, the first thing that I was handed to was a book. And what I noticed about all the people that I really looked up to, when I did an inventory and all the people that were kicking ass in life, all the leaders in life that I respected and looked up to, the one commonality was they were all avid readers. And I'm like, okay, what is this about? Like, let me look into this. And then I had a mentor give me the book, The Slight Edge by Olson. And that set me on the trajectory, because it's basically about basic habits. In that book, he talked about just reading 10 pages a day would profoundly change your life. And so I started doing that. And I will say that it has absolutely profoundly changed my life. The one discipline, if someone were to come up to me and be like, hey, Jay, how do I change my life? What's one simple thing that doesn't cost me any money? Because there's a plethora of books and libraries everywhere. I would tell them to go pick up a book and start reading. And
yeah, big time. I was just going to comment that going to high school and reading all the books that I didn't want to read, I hated reading. And then going into university and having to read another 4 years worth of books, it's like, I just don't want to read anymore. It just won't happen. Then going to teacher's college for my second degree and having to read some more. It's like, I'm done with this. Now, having said that, was it a valuable experience? Of course it was. Were the books amazing? Some of them were very, very impactful. But it wasn't until exactly somebody handed me a book that changed my life that I said, okay, you know what, there's some merit to all of this. So it was a slight edge for you, wasn't it?
Slight edge was one. Here's the stats. 33% of U.S. high school graduates never read a book after high school. 80% of U.S. families have not purchased a book this year. 50% of books started are never read to completion. 70% of adults have not been in a bookstore in the past 5 years.
Wow. Jay, how many books have you read in your lifetime, would you say?
In my lifetime?
And we're not talking about school books. We're talking about on your own, going to a library, buying a book, getting something online. How many books have you read?
I'm going to say I'm probably 300 to 400-ish by now. But that was like a late start. I didn't really start until I was 35, so about 10 years of reading.
Okay. Yeah, same. I'd say about 300-400. And that's why you have as much wisdom as you do. Without a doubt.
Yeah. Yes, without a doubt. And so one of my favorite quotes is by Jim Mattis, one of a very profound leader, former general and Secretary of Defense. If you haven't read hundreds of books, you're functionally illiterate and you'll be incompetent because your personal experiences alone aren't broad enough to sustain you. And I love that because he was known as the warrior monk who had a huge library of books. And the thing is, the great thing about books is there's all of this knowledge. People that have made mistakes in the past that share their wisdom of how to overcome adversity are in the books, and they're there. And that's what I love about that, because what he talked about, like with every military scenario that he was involved in, he had, because history repeats itself, he could reference another scenario and make command decisions because of the point of reference that he had, the wisdom from other people who had shared their wisdom in these books.
Okay, now he's a leader. He's a leader?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, then if he's a leader, that was one of the stupidest comments he could have ever made.
Oh, why is that?
It's fucking ridiculous. Okay, so basically that disqualifies 90% of the population that will never get there. That was arrogant. It was arrogant to say, I understand where he's coming from, but the fact is that doesn't give many people hope. Now I gotta read 300 books over the next 5 years. I'm fucked. That's zero encouragement. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I've read probably close to what he's read. And the reality is I can talk about a book like The Alchemist. I read The Alchemist. They say that's one of the best books around. Boring. I didn't enjoy it.
That is a very popular book that comes up in circles, and I didn't like it. Yeah.
It's like a top 5. I didn't like it. Who Moved My Cheese? Useless. All right. Well, not useless, but it didn't have the impact that some other books have. There was a book by Dean Smith, the guy who coached Michael Jordan in North Carolina. I loved the book. If you asked me what's the premise of the book, I couldn't tell you. So the reality here is, for those of you who are listening who don't read books or haven't read very much, and they don't have that breadth of wisdom that this guy was talking about, here's what I do know. Number one, you don't need to read books. You can listen to books. It's a lot faster. Number two, you can listen to book summaries and get the gist of it and still be ahead. Number three, there are podcasts available. There's YouTube, there's interviews available. So when we say readers are leaders, 100% I agree with that. But at the same time, there's other modes of operation. If you're too busy, Jay, I haven't read a book in, I'm going to say probably 3 years. I've listened to 2 audiobooks, one by Ed Milet. I liked it, Max Out. And the other one was Never Split the Difference. I loved it just recently. Yeah, huge. And don't get me wrong, I've studied that book, not just read it, studied and applied it. So my point is, yeah, readers are leaders, but there are other outlets, there are other modes of getting the information, because I think that's the gist of it, number one. And number two, as long as you're applying an impactful book, that's worth more than reading 10 books. And I want to make that clear, that you can make a lifestyle change off of one book if you apply it and say, I might not have the breadth of knowledge to go to war, but I have enough knowledge to apply and make a difference in my life. So I'm not offended by the comment, because it's a very good comment, but I'm just playing around. I thought it was a little arrogant.
No, it is. I will say that it is arrogant, but it's designed to get you to think, because there's so many people that aren't reading. And that is the point, to improve and expand your wisdom. But to your point about, so a common pitfall, I think, for a lot of people, especially in the personal growth and development, there's a lot of people that are like, they get excited about personal growth and development, and they go from not reading anything to like just consuming everything. They're in all these groups, they're reading all these books, they're talking about all the time. And what happens is they're not applying what they're learning. And you're right, there are a handful of books that if you were get to that, the next level, I think, is slowing down. Find something that truly resonated with you and begin to re-listen and start applying the principles. Because I think that you can get there, you can't have too much knowledge and too many choices and too much wisdom to a point where it paralyzes you, right? So that is the other side of it.
Why does it paralyze you, Jay? Because I'll tell you what, I saw this quote that said this. It says, I'd rather take ignorance on fire than knowledge on ice. And I understand his viewpoint, because sometimes it does paralyze you. What is it that paralyzes you when you get into a habit of reading, let's say 20 books in a year, and you got all this knowledge and you're paralyzed? into
It's
inaction.
it's paralysis by analysis because you have too many options. I think that's a fundamental problem that we have in our society today. Or we're dabbling too much. We'll start going down this one path and we quit and we start another path because we have all these choices. So I think that is also another pitfall.
Okay.
So yeah.
I have an acquaintance I know, and my son's going to listen to this podcast. He's going to start laughing because he knows who I'm talking about. The guy who I'm talking about is probably not going to listen to this podcast. But here's a guy with a Harvard degree, a Yale degree, and a Stanford degree. The guy's got 3 degrees from probably some of the most prestigious schools around. When you talk to him, he's an awkward guy. Socially, he's not very effective, and he doesn't make a lot of money. He doesn't have the best relationship. He's not the healthiest guy, but boy, is he a fact machine. He's in his own head and he's not doing anything. So when I look at a guy like that, I mean, you take a book and you got to apply it. You got to make something out of it, because there's so many people out there who are just fact machines and like they're not doing anything with their lives.
Yeah. You got application. You got to apply. 100%. You have to apply the knowledge.
100%.
I got a couple tips here for those that maybe like they just struggle getting in the habit of reading. But the bottom line is it doesn't have to actually be reading, just consuming knowledge, right?
Yes.
Changing out some of just making it part of your curriculum of personal growth and development. And whether it be, actually physically reading, which I encourage because I think you retain more of that, but it could be via audiobook. Hell, there's so many like YouTube clips, like you introduced me to like all of these like book overviews that have these cool little videos that are like little like 5 to 10 minute like overviews of what The Alchemist is. Because that is infinitely better than not reading at all. 100%. So just a couple tips. You don't have to suffer through a book. Like if you have a book, because there's a lot of people like, man, I pick up a book and I'm like, I've got to I don't like The Alchemist. I don't know that I finished that book because I couldn't stand reading it. It didn't resonate with me. Mm-hmm. But there's other books like A Man's Search for Meaning. I couldn't put that book down. Yeah. There are so many books out there. You should not have to suffer through a book. Pick up a book. If it's not resonating with you, put it down, have another book ready to go and pick it up and see if that one sticks with you. Yeah. Don't judge a book by its cover or title. And I would recommend that you ask people that do a lot of reading, like, hey, what are some books that really stood out to you? So you don't waste your time and money on books that maybe like look cool at the bookstore. Because there's a lot of people, I go to Barnes & Noble, there's people like looking around and all these fancy looking books with a nice cover that I've never heard of. And I think a lot of times you're just wasting your time. Yeah. Audiobooks. You're spending a lot of time in an automobile. An audiobook is a fantastic way to consume some knowledge.
100%.
Set time, make it part of your daily habit. For me, like in the mornings is my time. If I don't do it in the mornings, I probably won't read. And so I set a time. And if someone's like, well, I don't have time. Well, you do have time. It's just a matter of priority. So what could you substitute? Maybe it's, I read 10 pages. So maybe it takes I'm not a prolific reader, 10, 20 pages if I'm really into the book. And that's it. It takes me no more than 20, 30 minutes. I don't spend that much time. Very rarely am I spending more than a half hour reading. I read in I get my nugget and I move on. Yeah. And just have a list of books in the hopper, ready to go. So when you do put one down, because a lot of times people, they follow the habit of reading. They read a book, they put it down, and they don't have another one ready to go. So then they get out of the habit of reading. So just have a list. I always have a Kindle, and I've got my list of books in there. So those are just some things for those that want to get into reading or continue reading.
Yeah. It's interesting, Jay, because here I am going from hating books to devouring books to not reading books for the last 2.5 years. All right. So I'm in an awkward place talking about this, but I do know this: never split the difference. It was an audiobook I listened to in, I'm going to say 2.5 days, 3 days. It was long, 3 days. I read it over and over again, the study notes as well. And then I applied it to get a huge sales break on the vehicle I purchased. I actually applied it. And my wife was like, I can't believe you took it from Chris Voss. Everything he said, that book came in handy because we saved something like $4,000 or $5,000. Right. She was so proud of me because I applied it. And I was proud of myself too, because like, shit, that's the purpose of reading books. You take from and you learn. Now, having said that, Jay, I've got 2 degrees. You usually take 20 courses for a university degree. All right. I personally think in some cases, university is bullshit. And I'm not the only one to say that. Imagine this. Imagine you had your own self-directed course. You had 5 books in career, business, and finances, 5 books in fitness, nutrition, mental health, 5 books in relationship and people, and 5 books in time management and habits. And you took, let's say, 10 books a year over the course of 2 years. And you applied those like in a practical way, every single one of those books. Talk about the education that you'd have from that. Like I'm looking at the list that I made, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for example, or Never Split the Difference, the book I was talking about, Atomic Habits, Man's Search for Meaning. Imagine reading those books as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, and then taking them and applying them. You'd have a wicked degree from a library. It doesn't even cost you any money.
I love that you have the different, because we talk about the lines of effort in your life and having that little mini curriculum for yourself. And I like that. In fact, I've got like a media recommendation list that I hand out that are in the different buckets. But I like that. I'm going to take that idea and I'm going to put 5 books in each of those categories and make my recommended reading list. I would love to see yours. You want to make that a thing that we do, and then
100%, 100%.
Let's do that. Jay, I'd like to compare notes.
Likewise, I was thinking about that too. Well, think about it. Hard, right? Health. We're talking about health, so that's the fitness, nutrition, and mental health. The A in hard is affluence. That's the career, biz, finances. The R, relationships and people, right? And then obviously the personal development, that's the D, the development. That's where I put in time management and habits. Jay, that's the whole purpose of Do Hard Things. There's your curriculum. You know, to have a reading list like that and say, you've got a 1-year, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree that's self-directed as long as you apply everything. And I'll tell you right now, this is a showstopper. Your life will change infinitely if you apply what you've learned from some of these masters. Of course, your university might be different from mine, Jay, but I'm sure there's some overlap in the courses that we select, AKA books. And I'd love to see your list.
Well, a lot of the principles in personal development have not changed drastically. It's just a matter of delivery, right? Who the author is and how they've applied that. I like that. I want to go back to the point that you made about like going from no reading, because I think we were on the kind of the same trajectory, to like consuming a lot of books. I'm finding myself where I'm not consuming as many books, but I'm finding myself going back and rereading and trying to do more applications. So I'm slowing down. Yeah. And that, like that book, like Don't Split the Difference, is a highly tactical book that everyone should pick that book up, and they could apply that, because I love the negotiation tips about anchoring, like how to buy a car. Like he talks you through how to buy a car. I've used the principles and they absolutely work. I like the mirroring. Like I use that all the time in conversation, right? Because I'm an introvert. So sometimes especially like networking events, the mirroring and how to get people, because people there's like some tricks that you can use that are phenomenal. And I love it because he has these compelling, like, you know, FBI, like negotiation scenarios, but then he transitions over like how you can use it in everyday,
100%.
Love that book. So yeah, a book like that's one you could reread, highlight, keep on your desktop. I got it here somewhere.
Yeah.
But but the bottom line is what is your curriculum for your own personal growth and development, and how are you seeking knowledge? That's the fundamental point of this call. Yeah. There's no measuring contest like how many books you read or any of that type of stuff. But what I want to challenge anyone listening to this is, are you planting wisdom and knowledge into your mind? Because I think that we are spending way too much time consuming content that isn't of added value on TikTok and social media. There's a lot of things that aren't serving you. So do you have a curriculum for yourself? And what is that? Because I'm highly educated. I've got 4 degrees, right? I got a general, a bachelor's, and 2 graduate degrees.
Crazy.
And
Crazy.
most of that, I would look back in time. I'm like, most of those classes and the books that I had read and the work that I was forced to do, yes, some of it served me. I'm kind of like with you. Like, I don't know that college is for everyone. That there's probably some curriculums if I go back in time, I probably wouldn't do. But there's like books that I've stumbled across, like the 5 Love Languages. Had I known about that book and the 5 Love Languages, could have infinitely saved me a lot of headache and heartache in my life. Or like, don't split the difference, how to negotiate. I've bought a car numerous times without any practical knowledge of how to do it. And, the salespeople, they know what they're doing. They'll get over on you.
They're trained. They're trained. They have a huge advantage.
Yeah. You mentioned, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah. Foundational, book on the topic of finances that'll revolutionize how you think about it.
100%.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, that's the thing. I look at the one book that impacted me the most, believe it or not, was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. My university professor and Teachers College gave me that book. And I've read it a few times. Jay, there's 7 habits. One of the habits is putting first things first. Okay. That has been life-changing. I am the most efficient person around because I get stuff done. I put first things first. First thing Monday, I get tons done. By the end of the week, I'm scratching my head going like, I did everything by Wednesday. Now what? That book fundamentally changed my life. If I read no other book but that book, it was worth my time. Point number 2, begin with the end in mind. So instead of living a life by default where things happen to you, my life was already designed. I planned it all out and I just executed because I knew where I was going. Something as simple as that, right? Life-changing book. All it takes is one. That's all it does. So here's the thing. We're going to make a list, right? You've already got a list, I believe.
I got a list, but I want to bucketize it in the buckets and put it in order. I'm going to do it in order. If I were to hand a list to someone, these are my recommendations to you. This is the order in which I would read it in these categories.
Nice.
And we'll compare it.
Yeah, it's interesting because here's the thing, and this is a challenge to anybody. This is coming from the non-reader in me. If you read a book and you don't apply it, that's pretty pathetic. I take a look at a person who has a kinesiology degree, 4 years worth of kinesiology. They've spent so much money to get that degree. And 10, 15 years later, they know exactly what to do. And if they're still out of shape, that's pathetic. If you read a book like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and you apply it to your life, and then 2 years down the road, you slip, you got to fix your head.
Yeah.
Because that's not cool. Now you have knowledge. A person who is a little bit ignorant because they don't have the information, that's your excuse. But once you get that information, you better start applying it.
Yeah. And that's the thing with most people and their problems. They know what they need to do. It's a matter of application, right? That would be the next thing that you need to do is apply the knowledge with consistency.
And there's books on that.
There's books on how to do that, right?
And there's books on how to do that. I think Atomic Habits is on my list.
Yeah.
That's one of them. And there's many of them like that.
Yep. Love it. Love it. Well, I want to transition now to recognizing our Do Hard Things weekly spotlight winner this week. And let me share my screen here. You're going to love this one, Tom. This is Libby Woolcock.
Nice.
Libby and Chris.
Yes.
And Libby is an amazing human being. So is Chris. They are a military family. And recently, without getting into a lot of detail, Libby was involved in she had a little medical incident in which she had to lay on her back due to just an issue she had with the fluid in her brain. And they were trying to figure out how to basically patch this thing. But for a few months, she had to spend like 20 plus hours on her back until they figured out what to do. And in the meantime, she handled it with such poise and such grace. She's a real estate agent and was involved in a competition at work. And she was still grinding it out with work. Chris had to pick up some heavy lifting around the house because obviously, you know, they've got a family there. They usually get the dogs, and there's their daughter. And, you know, it was a very challenging time for them, but they overcame it. Excited to say that Libby is now, they've resolved the issue and she's back upright. But for a couple months, she's a member of the Forge Mastermind group, and she would be there on the calls. And it was just awesome to see her determination and grit. So I want to acknowledge Chris and Libby this week for being the Do Hard Things Spotlight winner. We're going to send you guys a shirt and a patch. So thank you guys for being such an inspiration. They're amazing human beings. And I was just blown away by how they handled that particular situation.
Yeah, so I really like these guys, and they are a wealth of information, inspiration, just down to earth people who with a lot of wisdom. For a young couple, that's pretty good. Yeah,
they're great people. So salt of the earth people. We need more people like Chris and Libby. So you guys, appreciate you guys. So all right, so I guess you and I have some homework this week. We will we'll compare our notes for our books. I'm excited to see what your books are. And I would just say, I just want to, if people had asked me for advice, like how can I change the trajectory of my life? This is a low cost, I would say it's a discipline that you need to incorporate in your life is try to consume knowledge, audio book, a book. You don't have to read thousands of books. But the more books you read, the more knowledge you're going to gain. And then, like you said, you got to implement. It takes action. So,
yeah, exactly.
But there is a book out there for any problem that you have in your life. There is a book out there because someone who's experienced it, they've come up with a solution and they talk about it. And so, yeah. So I don't like to read. It's bullshit. Read or listen to them or watch them on YouTube because they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Dude, I can't wait to see your list. Honestly, I can't wait. And I think we need to basically show whoever's interested in our list, and they can compile their own lists. I don't mind taking recommendations. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. We'll let's compile our lists, and we'll make like a one-pager download or something like that. We'll make that available for people so they can check it out. And I would also love to hear. I'll make a post or something, and I'd love to see what other people's lists are on these variety of topics because I'm always looking to expand my mind and increase the book list that I have in my hopper.
Yeah, 100%, man.
But I'm in that, like right now, like I'm listening. I had a drive in from Columbia this morning. It was a 2-hour drive. I do a lot of driving, and I'm re-listening to The Prosperous Coach. I think it's a great book on the topic of coaching because I'm a running coach and performance coach. This is the 5th time that I've listened to that book because it's so good. And that's a book that I'm trying to apply the principles of in my life. And I think that's, we all need that. Pick a book.
Yeah. Now, having said that, it came from you someplace, 1,000 Raving Fans. It's not a book.
It's an essay.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm reading that right now and just kind of saying, how do I make that work for me?
Yeah.
Right. So always reading, always learning, always applying.
Yeah, that is for anyone that it's 1,000 true fans. And I got this essay from the book, the Titans book from Tim Ferriss. The Tools of Titans.
Tools of Titans.
Which
that's one of the recommended books.
I love that book because I love Tim Ferriss. I love that book because he basically has like 10 questions, and he basically asked all of these prolific people the same questions. And their answers were different, and I love that book. And it's on my desk.
One of his books is on my list, by the way. Yeah. One of his books is on my list.
The 4-Hour Workweek fundamentally changed my perspective on how I view life. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Just books like that will change the trajectory of your life. So I've just posted that the 1,000 True Fans. Basically, what the essay is, if you're in sales, you're trying to start a movement or anything like that, you only need 1,000 people to make a career out of that. Because a lot of people, they get into something and think they got to have like 1 million followers on Facebook. And
no, you don't.
It's 1,000 True Fans. So that's posted there. So, all right. Well, I got to head off get on down to the doctor's office. That's how I'm starting my Monday morning.
I hope somebody bothers you about your shirt and you start reciting some books that they need to read.
All these shirts are conversation starters. Every time I'm walking around, like, man, I love that. Dominate. I get a lot of comments on the Dominate one. So this one's going to be interesting. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah.
So, All
Okay,
right,
dude.
well, hey, have a great week, and for everyone else out there, keep doing hard things, and we'll see
Cheers,
you guys.
guys.
See you guys next week.